All right, welcome back. In this episode, this is the actual end episode, or actually not almost. I still got to do the battery stuff. But in terms of the speaker installation and amplifiers, as we can see here, all the factory stuff is back in place, just like it was done originally. I had done an upgrade to the tweeters here. We might actually do another upgrade to the tweeters and stuff like that. He's thinking about maybe doing a set of bullet tweeters up here. You've also got the factory, 6-inch here, all put back together. It looks factory and normal, like it was supposed to. Also, the amplifiers, like I said, they both fit. The good news was they both fit up underneath the seats. And as I explained, he has a new child, so he has to keep everything like this so that we don't have any problems in the install. On the rear deck and stuff like that, what it ended up doing was I ended up cutting out a hole on the deck and just simply putting an 8-inch grill up here on the top side. The driver on the bottom side, is mounted here. Mind the drywall screws, I haven't cut them off yet and stuff like that. But it was the deck itself was fully deadened on the other side, so we left this side like it normally would be. But on the other side, it was completely deadened and everything was shut down, and it works amazingly well. Again, if you look, you have nothing but trunk. Nothing in here blocking or anything. And again, the MS8 is over here in this back corner. You can see just a portion of it right there. And that is the main control unit. The MS8 is do all the processing. So basically, it's the unit that takes the head unit input and then converts it into it's a Logic 7 system. So we've got rear speakers, front speakers. If I had centers and stuff like that, I can make it even more fun. But basically, that's it. And like I said, end up with a whole trunk, no space anywhere is lost in any format. Underneath the seats, amplifiers, factory locations there. I'm about to do also an upgrade on his rear. He wants me to go ahead and upgrade his rear speakers too. But other than that, that's it for now. And of course, the last thing I'm going to be doing will be the battery upgrade, which is basically it's all the power cable. This is just simply me. This was temporary last week to get the system up running. We'd run out of time. So we're going to go ahead and do a full upgrade here. I'm going to do what's known as the Big 2. There's an older saying called the Big 3, and the Big 3 was actually for trucks, and that referred to ground. The 3 actually stands for ground. It has nothing really to do with power. People usually always assumed it had to do with power, but the Big 3 was actually a term that I had coined back in the early 90s because I did a lot of trucks. And the reason why it's called the Big 3 was the ground had to be pointed at 3 places. One was the block itself, because you have to have it, something closest to the alternator itself, because that's your source of power. The second was a battery to frame system, and then the third one was a battery, or in this case, really what it really comes down to is a reference point. Like, say for instance, in this car here, if you look down here, that has a really nice ground reference point. Now this goes directly to the body, and so what we would do is that on trucks, I would always put a frame bolt, on there, because that would give me a great reference to all ground, or a place to put all grounds to. And so you'd always have one from the alternator going to the frame, one from the frame going to the battery, and then one from the frame going to the actual body panels of the car. Most of the times I would do firewalls or stuff like that, because in a truck, the fender here is a separate object in comparison to this. And so you didn't have a very good point of reference for ground, because, and the reason why this is important, is that the headlight blinking that people associate with power problems and stuff is actually a ground problem. The reason why it's a ground problem is that the ground wire going to the battery, because the battery is your, think of it as like a storage cell, and that's all it's doing, right? So it keeps things at 12.8 and above. Your alternator produces the power, so it's the one that's going to give you like 14.4. And so if we have a problem where we're like playing, or let's say we're just using the AC in the car at full tilt, and it's nighttime and all this stuff, you got a whole bunch of accessories on. the voltage on the alternator will start to drop, and so the battery has to take over in terms of making sure the voltage stays stable, up to, like I said, 12.8 or so. And the problem comes in is that most of the times factories have only this little has a cheap ground. On this car, it's actually pretty good. This is a 4 gauge, and it's going down in the body. And that's wonderful, but I haven't found, and I know there is one here somewhere, but I haven't found a ground strap from the main motor to the body itself. So this is one of the major upgrades I'm going to do. And the reason why, again, I go back to the headlights, the reason why they blink is because of this wire here. Because the current capability of this wire is too small, on most vehicles, it's usually an 8 gauge. Once we start drawing a lot of power using our amplifiers, the battery can no longer, we cannot get to the battery storage, is basically what it comes down to. And so, since we most likely ground in the back to the amplifiers to the body of the car, they're going to draw the most current, and the headlights are going to suffer. They're going to be the first objects to lower. You're going to see the voltage swing due to the fact of this current draw as it tries to pull as much power down the line. Because most people associate that when I'm building a big system and stuff like that, I have the biggest power wire in the world, but they completely forget about ground. Well, the funny part about voltage is that it goes, when you're talking about voltage, it goes from positive to negative. But when we're talking about current, it goes from negative to positive. And that is super critical. If you don't have the proper ground in your system, you will always suffer in terms of voltage swings on your amplifiers. Whether it be a D class, whether it be an AB class and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. All amplifiers in some format are a non-regulated front end. And so if we don't have the current to give the power supply, it's the voltage will swing. Your power supply in the amplifier will drop, and when that happens, you lose your output. Your output just starts plummeting, and the amplifier tries to compensate by pulling more current. Well, it can't pull more current because you don't have a good source. So whenever you're doing this is why it's super important. Now in the car, it's not a big 3, it's a big 2, and the big 2 is alternator to a point source. Like in this case, it's going to be this ground strap back to the battery itself, because that's all we need to do, because this is a unibody car, and since this is part of the unibody going all the way to the back of the car and stuff like that, I don't have to worry about it being disconnected, such as a fender. So we don't have to worry about it. As long as I connect at the back body of the car, you'll have a great ground source. In this case, I grounded literally right at on a main frame rail that holds the seats and stuff like that. No, I didn't put it in a seat bolt. So anyway, I'll give you more heads up, and I'll show you more on the battery stuff in the next video and stuff, but I just wanted to show you all the rest of the done stuff in the car and stuff and how it looked off factory. See you then.